Now, recently, on behalf of HLN and In Session on our sister network, TRU TV, I sat down with a roundtable of experts to discuss the case and Michael Jackson's life. On that panel, investigative reporter Diane Diamond, Anthony DeCurtis, contributing editor for Rolling Stone, Jackson's former bodyguard, Mike Garcia, and one of his best friends, Steve Manning. First up, we talk about Jackson's molestation trial to help us find out who was the real Michael Jackson. Let's take it to the trial. And as Mike just said, Mike, you feel that trial should have never happened.
No. Diane,
what did you think?
Well, I'm listening to what the former employees and friends of Michael have said about him never wanting to go back to Neverland because he felt raped. I know some members of the prosecution team who would say he didn't want to go back because he had been exposed. I'm not saying that Michael Jackson was a pedophile. A jury ruled that he was not.
Thank you.
But in my book,
and if you knew him,
I outline several years' worth of interviews that I did with lots of young boys and their families that were too afraid to come forward and press charges, that all told the same kind of story of how the child was manipulated to come and see Michael Jackson, manipulated to be alone with Michael Jackson, and maybe the adults in their lives were overprotective or overreacting. But Michael Jackson made the first charges go away, as I outline in the book, by paying $30 million. Who does that? And don't tell me he had a lot of money then, because he wasn't working at that point.
It could have been for legal advice.
Diane gets finished. Did you finish that? Mrs. Jackson bought Johnny Cochran. I had a conversation with Johnny Cochran personally about this. Mrs. Jackson bought him in late before they settled that, and he begged her not to settle it, but he wanted to just go away. Right. And he regretted that later on.
That is just not true. Johnny Cochran and Howard Weitzman negotiated that monetary settlement with the first young boy.
And Johnny Cochran asked him not to settle.
That's just not of the fact.
But a lot of things that you're saying is hearsay, because I was with him when he went to the lawyers and things like that. And
you were there in 1993?
No, I was not there in 93.
I was there in 1993.
But the things that you're saying is hearsay. And when I've been with him with lawyers, and I know that he did, like what he's saying.
I'm not going to speculate Johnny Cochran. He told me that Mr. Jackson did bring him in like that.
Right.
He begged him not to settle. He just wanted to go away.
Ryan, that is not the fact.
That's what I was told by Johnny Cochran personally and by his mom.
Absolutely.
So I'll leave it like that.
Mm-hmm. Mike, you're saying that what Diane is saying is hearsay. Why? What did you learn from Michael Jackson?
She's saying everything that the information she is saying is things from secondhand. Like I said, if you knew Mr. Jackson, you know he didn't do it.
Okay, so then what's the real story? Why do we know that?
I sat and talked with young boys. I sat and talked to their families.
If you knew Mr. Jackson, you knew he didn't do it. You knew his gentle nature, and you knew that he was...
And you weren't there in 1993, and I was.
You know what I mean?
When did you first start working for Michael Jackson?
So what, he had a Ferris wheel?
When did you first start working for him? Did you work for him?
In 06.
Okay, he wasn't even at Neverland then.
If you knew Mr. Jackson, you knew that he didn't do it. That's all I got to say.
You were not even around when he lived at Neverland.
Diane was talking about kids or, and families. Like, they're not bringing suit. They're not doing anything. Like, what is motivating them?
Well, who's not to say that their parents didn't push them on them? You know what I mean? There's a lot of things that could have happened.
That's right.
You're sitting there pointing things out and, this and that. But at the same time, because I'm going to be honest, I get asked that question a lot. When people find out that I was with Mr. Jackson and things like that, do you think he did it? Absolutely not. He was a very gentle man.
Diane, isn't it true, Diane, that the Ryan father had pushed him this whole thing, charges? He later admitted that his father made him put those charges?
No, that is not true. That was put out on the internet that the first young man recanted, which was absolutely not true. That came out after his father committed suicide. And people said, oh, look, his father committed suicide. See, Chandler's gone. It was all a hoax. Mr. Chandler committed suicide because he had a degenerative disease that was robbing him of his ability to stand up, to speak, to swallow, or to think.
I wish you could have went to Neverland in your family. It was something for families. It was a beautiful place.
Or news.
I'm sure it was a beautiful
place.
You couldn't have but Mike, with all due respect, you started working for him in 2006.
Right.
He didn't even live at Neverland.
Right.
You don't know what went on at Neverland. I don't either. I just know the people I spoke to.
When you're that embedded with somebody 24 hours a day, like I said, there was no entourage. There was no entourage. It was us, Mr. Jackson, and the kids. And when you're embedded with somebody like that, you pick up on things. I have a great attention to detail. Okay, I watch I watch how everybody does everything. There's no way that he did it. There's absolutely no way. And him being a child himself, you know, you want to talk about his house and at Neverland, and he had this and he had that. He probably had it for himself first. You know,
Oh, absolutely.
You know, so
that may
that's
be
why I
so.
look at it.
But you know, Ron, the bottom line is, like I said earlier, the trial killed him. That drained him. He was dead already.
And he saw a lot of things as far as how people
Turned against him.
Absolutely, turned their backs against him. I mean, I heard that there was a party, you know, after the trial, and it was supposed to be 1,000 people, only 200 showed up. And he saw a lot of things. He saw a lot of people's true colors. And it was, you know,
Yeah, he did, yeah.
You know, I mean, honestly, we didn't get paid for several months, and that we stayed with the guy because we saw his naiveness and the way he was being treated by media and everybody else, and the control. The guy was, you know, a heart of gold.
Let me ask this of both of you. You both spent a lot of time with Michael. Did Michael ever spend time alone with boys? The rumors that he was in bed with boys, with other children.
I never seen it.
You never saw any of that.
The only children I saw him with was his own, and he was a great father.
And the kids, the relatives.
And you do know, Ryan, if indeed the charges were true, and now let me say it this way. You do know, Ryan, that a child molester does not molest in front of other people. They're very secretive, they're very crafty. Anybody at the FBI who wrote the profile on what a pedophile is will tell you that they are the most charming, fascinating, engaging people in all of criminal life. Mm-hmm. They first must seduce the parent to get to the child. I'm not saying Michael Jackson was a pedophile, but to say, oh, golly, he is such a nice guy and he's so sweet and he's like a child himself, that could also be a crafty subterfuge.
And to also get it from secondhand as well,
but
though.
Diane, for all
I mean,
the
you're
jury
going
of
off secondhand knowledge.
I look at both sides to everything, and I know that angers some people.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
But the Santa Barbara jury found him not guilty.
And that's a good point, Steve. And that's a good point. So,
Absolutely.
Dan, why was he found not guilty then?
Because I think the state did not prove its case. I sat in that court every single day, and the case that was filed became so complicated with conspiracies and phone numbers and phone trees and this and that, they forgot to just tell the story and let the jury decide on
But those are very serious
that.
charges. I mean, an all-white jury, too, in Santa Barbara. I mean, a black guy.
It wasn't in Santa Barbara, first of all. It was in Santa Maria.
Santa Maria.
It was 120 miles north of Santa Barbara.
All right, well, I'll ask this one other question. And Steve and Mike, let me get your thoughts on this. It's now, as Diane's saying, it's been documented that he paid families of children that accused him of child molestation. So the question...
She said he didn't come forward. She said one family, the guy Ryan.
Okay, but let's assume it's one family then. Assuming that, I think the question that would occur to a lot of people, guys, is why would you pay somebody off for something that you didn't do?
Well, he regretted that he settled that case. He regretted that to this day.
Yeah.
He regretted that. He should have let it go to trial. It's like the first one vindicated. Second trial vindicated. He wished he did the same thing with the Ryan case.
And you know what? I think that's a very good point, because if he had not settled the first trial and the first case and it had gone to trial, I don't think there ever would have been a second one. He made himself a target by paying $30 million to a boy's family. Every ne'er-do-well in America could have come forward and said, hey, look, he pays people. Let's go file a false claim. There weren't any for 10 years. And in 2003, a young boy suffering from cancer alleges that Michael Jackson did untoward things to him. A jury found him not guilty, and I say that's the way we need to remember Michael Jackson.
Thank you.
He was a genius, he was a talented genius, and a tortured soul.
Up next.
They all came right through the gate, basically almost knocking down the gate. So, they did reach out to him.
The Jackson family stages a drug intervention at the King of Pop's Vegas home.
At Aviva, we wonder why other life insurance companies treat you like a policy, not a person. Instead of getting to know you, they simply assign you a number. Aviva is here to change all that. We're bringing humanity back to insurance and putting people before policies. Aviva Life Insurance and Annuities. We are building insurance around you.
Nature Valley Sweet and Salty Nut Bars. They're made from whole roasted nuts and dipped in creamy peanut butter, making your craving for a sweet and salty bar irresistible. By Nature Valley.
Hey guys, so in 10 minutes, we're gonna head back down the hill.
Down the hill? All right. Yeah, we're actually thinking maybe hike up there so we catch up with you guys. Got it?
Some things in life they just don't want to see. But if Martin Luther was living, he wouldn't let this be no longer. All I gotta say is that they don't really care about us.
Welcome back to Special Report as we examine who was the real Michael Jackson. You see, we all know the performer. He was a preteen sensation with the Jackson 5. He wowed the world with his Off the Wall and Thriller and Bad albums. But what about the man behind those hit songs and those unbelievable dance moves? Well, our roundtable panel takes a closer look at the king of pop's drug problem. He's in pain, and he takes these drugs. How did he feel about that? I mean, this is, you're saying that all this time
he didn't like it.
He didn't want it, but now he picks it up and takes it.
The doctor said, here, this will help you feel better. It wasn't street drugs at Studio 54. It was a doctor giving it to you, so it's okay. And it is okay if you're in pain. But then you got to be able to set it aside, set it down.
Why couldn't he set it aside?
It was very, the burn was very severe, very painful to him.
But once the burn healed, as time heals wounds, why couldn't he set it? Or could he set it aside, Steve?
I must say, too, a whole different crowd. He started hanging out with the Hollywood elite with, you know, the Liz Taylors, and those people love to pop pills, bless her soul. You know, I must say, exactly.
And it might have made him feel a little bit more that he wasn't doing, you know, drugs that he was saying.
It's not like going on the corner, street corner.
Right, absolutely.
You know, on that.
Yeah.
Okay. Anthony, again, you're looking...
No, I think that, you know, those situations, I think the point about, you know, their prescription drugs and that sort of thing, a doctor is involved, I think that legitimized it for him. But I think that the drugs, I mean, it's more than about physical pain. I mean,
like going on the corner, buying up a package on the corner, or going to somebody's house, you know.
I think he felt a little bit more comfortable that he wasn't doing that.
Kind of easing a psychological pain, I mean, an emotional pain.
But again, Ryan, again, Michael Jackson despised drugs, the one I knew.
But that's what I'm trying to get at. He despised drugs. Doctors give him this. He's firm in his convictions that he despises drugs. He takes them because of the pain of that burn. And yet, according to many people, he keeps doing them. If he despised them so much, what, Steve, was stopping him from putting him down? Was there a family member that should have stepped in? Was there someone that should have...
Well, then he had different plastic surgery procedures, and I guess you have to give painkillers for that. So I guess it came... What happened? I can't say what happened. I don't know. It's sad what happened like that, whatever, you know?
Right.
After you start having plastic surgeries after plastic surgeries, you need more and more pain, and the doctor gives it to you.
Right.
So it's okay.
And it's legal.
And it's legal. And there comes a point at which you can't put it down now. And I don't know how many plastic surgeries he had. I have no idea. You can look at the progression of the pictures over time, but it went from one doctor to several doctors, and then, well, as we know, when he died, his nightstand was full of different prescriptions from different doctors.
You know, the very essence of addiction is denial. You know, I think that, you know, and if you're living in a world where nobody's going to really walk up to you and say, Michael, you know what you really have to do? I mean, nobody talks to Michael Jackson that way.
Well, but let's admit, and I don't know if Mike can speak to this or Steve, but I've had several sources tell me that the family tried several times, several interventions. And they were serious attempts at interventions.
They came to Vegas for an
Catherine
intervention.
Jackson knew her baby boy was hooked on drugs, and they never worked. Not one intervention worked.
Tell me about the intervention that took place in Vegas.
It was in 07, in February of 07, and the family came. And they came early, you know, early in the morning, and they were all there. I believe it was Reby, I think Jermaine was there, another gentleman that was in the car. I couldn't identify him, but they all came, you know, came right through the gate, you know, basically almost knocking down the gate. So, you know, they did reach out to him.
And what happened?
He went into the security trailer to talk to them. You know, he wanted to do it in private. You know, he didn't allow them to come inside the house. He wanted to talk to them, you know, so he talked to his brothers inside the security trailer for a good, I'd say 20 minutes, you know, and then everybody left. Like I said, we didn't try to get too involved in the family, you know, business. That's that's for them to take care of. You know what I mean? So we stood back. They talked inside the trailer, and then they left.